Among the many challenges that President Biden has inherited from the Trump administration, one of the biggest and most critical has been the situation happening on the southern border. New documents obtained by NBC News show the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has a growing backlog of unaccompanied migrant children in its custody, with hundreds being held longer than the legal limit of 72 hours. On top of that, nearly 100 of those children held past the limit are under the age of 13. President Biden's new DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas spoke exclusively this morning with NBC's Jacob Soboroff about the growing crisis.
NBC News has obtained data that shows as of Tuesday, CBP had 1,763 unaccompanied kids in its custody. 625 of them were there longer than the legal 72-hour limit to be transferred out to HHS. That same day, my understanding is you briefed the President of the United States at the White House about the fact DHS projects 117,000 unaccompanied children. 117,000 could cross the border this year. That would be a record. Is that number accurate, first of all? And how do you plan on processing and treating those children who come to the United States humanely?
What we are doing is building the capacity to address the needs of those children, and we are guided by some core principles. Number one, we act in the best interest of the children, and we act in the best interest of the American people. And thirdly, we adhere to our values and principles as a country. And so, in fact, the numbers are significant. The challenge is significant. And our plans are well underway as we build the capacity to address the needs of the children, and we are rebuilding from scratch.
Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff, live at the southern border, and Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino and MSNBC contributor. Jacob, I am very much looking forward to watching this interview in its entirety. Let's talk, though, about the clip that we just listened to. Children being kept at facilities that are not equipped for this. Migrant children supposed to be transferred into custody within 72 hours. What's the holdup? Why is this taking so long?
A capacity, Alicia, and you heard Secretary Mayorkas say that very plainly. You know, he said we need to build the capacity, and the reason there were 625 children in the custody of the Border Patrol in stations along like places just like where I am right now in Otay Mesa for longer than 72 hours, the legal limit, is because there is not room for them in Health and Human Services shelters where they are cared for by child welfare professionals. That's why we heard that HHS was opening that influx facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas. It's why the Border Patrol is standing up processing centers in places like Donna, Texas. They're talking about opening facilities in Del Rio and elsewhere. And when you hear the secretary say building capacity, that's exactly what he means. They need the space to get children, number one, out of the Border Patrol stations, which are essentially jails. You remember in 2019 when kids were laying on concrete floors under those Mylar blankets, jammed together, some sleeping even outside in those kind of cage-like facilities. They want to avoid that at all costs. And where it's a big departure, frankly, from the Trump administration, there are many departures, but a big one is using the language, the best interests of the child. That's how child welfare professionals often refer to caring for children. It's not how law enforcement, especially the Border Patrol, has historically referred to caring for children, and they're signaling a departure. The policy and the practice is not quite caught up yet to the realities on the ground.
Jacob, did you get a sense of timeline from the secretary?
I think it's a great point. He basically said they're going to do it as needed, roll out capacity as needed. I'll tell you what, right now, they need capacity. The idea that there are 625, were as of Tuesday, kids over the legal limit in Border Patrol stations, it means they need that capacity right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we heard from Homeland Security or HHS the addition of those types of facilities in the not too distant future.
Maria Teresa, children at the southern border, how to manage their arrivals safely, humanely. It's one piece of the immigration landscape. At the same time, there is appetite to begin contending with the way the system is broken inside of the country. There's a big comprehensive piece of legislation. We learned today Dems don't believe they have the votes to bring it to the floor just yet. I don't know that any of the three of us find that surprising. But does that create then more momentum behind these standalone efforts on DREAM and Promise and essential workers?
I think that's exactly right, Alicia. What we are seeing is that not only is there momentum, but there is a great desire among the immigrant rights movements, along with the administration, along with a lot of the members of Congress, to start putting some points on the board, to start providing alleviation for these immigrant families who have felt such distress under the Trump administration for 4 years, and saying we are going to not only provide relief, but for the Biden administration needs to be able to demonstrate that he's delivering on his campaign promises. So while the piece of legislation that was sent over from the White House down to the House is incredibly comprehensive, there's also an understanding that it's going to be broken up more than likely. And we want to make sure that we're providing as much relief as to the families that are living within our border as much as possible. But even when we're talking about the reunification proposal from the task force that Mayorkas has put together, it is incredibly comprehensive. It's talking about wraparound services, Alicia, everything from reuniting families, giving them the option to reunify here or back at home, but also providing them with support services such as mental health, recognizing that the trauma that many of these families and these children have suffered under the Trump administration is not going to be erased. So again, I do think that what Jacob is saying is absolutely true. It's like they're centering this around the most vulnerable. How do they do it well? And at the same time, how do they put people, young people, children, back into the system in places that are secure and vetted? And that is one of the top priorities as well from the administration, from what I understand.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.